In 1893, Germany, a 12-year-old boy named Hans Wilsdorf lost both his parents. He was left with a small inheritance, but even that was stolen during travel. In a matter of weeks, he had lost everything: his family, his security, his future. But there was still one thing he never lost: his deep, unstoppable passion for watches. This is the story of Rolex. After being orphaned, Hans was sent to boarding school by a relative who had sold off his parents' business. At school, he met a Swiss student who introduced him to the incredible craftsmanship of Swiss watchmaking. Hans was fascinated. Something about the precision, the mechanics. It stirred something in him. In the year 1900, he moved to Switzerland to chase this passion. He landed a job at a watch company called Kuno Korten, where his job was simple but intense: test the accuracy of hundreds of pocket watches every day. Over time, this repetitive task gave him something valuable: a razor-sharp eye for precision. It was here that Hans Wilsdorf's dream was born. He wouldn't just sell watches. He would create the most accurate timepieces the world had ever seen. In 1903, he moved to London to further his ambitions. But once again, tragedy followed him. His entire inheritance, 33,000 German gold marks, was stolen while traveling. It was devastating. But Hans had developed a resilience few people possessed. He took a sales and marketing job at a watch company in London, where over 2 years, he learned everything about the business: how watches were made, how they were sold, and most importantly, what customers truly wanted. He realized something critical. Most companies were focused on flashy, decorative designs. But what people actually wanted were watches that were simple, accurate, durable, and elegant. So at just 24 years old, Hans made a bold decision. He would start his own company. Since he didn't have the funds, he partnered with his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, who provided the seed capital. And in 1905, the firm Wilsdorf and Davis was born. Their first big success: a compact, travel-friendly pocket watch called the Portfolio Pocket Watch. It came in a premium leather pouch and was built to last. It did well in the market. But Hans wasn't content. He believed that wristwatches were the future, even though back then, most men believed wristwatches were only for women. In 1906, he spotted a cultural trend. Both men and women in Britain loved wearing bracelets. That's when Hans got a genius idea. He launched gold and silver wristwatches with bracelet-like straps, and marketed them not as wristwatches, but as bracelet watches. It worked. The trend caught on. But there was something missing: a brand identity. At the time, most watches just carried the manufacturer's name, which was usually long and clunky. Hans wanted something short, elegant, and easy to pronounce in any language. Something that would fit neatly on a watch face. After experimenting with hundreds of names, he landed on one that just felt right: Rolex. In 1908, he officially trademarked it. But even with strong sales, Hans wasn't satisfied. Wristwatches were still less accurate than pocket watches due to their smaller movements. Hans immersed himself in horology, met with top Swiss watchmakers, and developed the Caliber 200 movement. After rigorous testing, it became the first wristwatch movement in the world to receive the chronometer certificate, a game-changer in the watch industry. By 1914, Rolex had expanded rapidly, employing over 60 people in Britain. But just when success seemed certain, World War I broke out. The British government imposed a 33% export duty on watches to fund the war. Overnight, Rolex prices soared, and sales dropped. To survive, Hans made a daring decision. He moved the entire company to Switzerland, home of precision watchmaking, and renamed it Rolex Watch Company Limited. During the war, soldiers required durable, readable wristwatches for battlefield coordination. Rolex launched its trench watches, featuring luminous radium-painted hands and tough, unbreakable glass. After the war, wristwatches became mainstream. But another issue remained. Dust and water could still seep in. and damaged the delicate movements inside. So Hans got to work. He invented a new case system with screw-down crowns and rubber gaskets, a design that sealed the watch completely. It was so watertight, he named it the Rolex Oyster, introduced in 1920. To market it, Hans didn't just run ads. He made a statement. He partnered with Mercedes Gleitzer, a swimmer attempting to cross the English Channel. She wore the Rolex Oyster on a necklace during her 10-hour swim in freezing water. Though she didn't finish the crossing, the watch did. It was in perfect working condition. Hans featured Mercedes in print ads and displayed Rolex Oysters inside fish tanks. The Oyster became a cultural sensation, but there was still one final inconvenience. You had to manually wind your watch every couple of days. If you forgot and didn't screw the crown tight, water could enter. So Hans created something revolutionary: the Perpetual Rotor, a semicircular weight inside the watch that rotated with the wearer's wrist movement, automatically powering the watch. This was the birth of the Oyster Perpetual. No more winding, no more leaks. A masterpiece of engineering. Then came World War II. Once again, Rolex's operations were disrupted, and sales plummeted. In 1944, Hans's wife passed away. It was a heavy loss, but he didn't stop. In 1945, to mark 40 years of Rolex, he launched the Rolex Datejust, the world's first automatic, waterproof wristwatch with a date display. When some customers found the date window too small, inspiration came from an accident. A water droplet on Hans's watch magnified the date. That moment led to the now iconic 2.5x magnifying Cyclops lens. Rolex continued to innovate. 1953, the Explorer for mountaineers. 1955, the GMT Master for airline pilots. 1960, the Deep Sea Special, which reached the deepest point of the ocean, over 36,000 feet, and still worked perfectly. From the top of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, Rolex had proven itself like no other brand. Hans Wilsdorf didn't just build watches, he built a legacy, a symbol of perfection, durability, and timeless elegance. That legacy lives on, ticking stronger than ever. This is Rolex. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend checking out the next one.